I am just so not a fan of that type of attitude. I absolutely despise that type of attitude. This is a guy who's been playing at the top level in Europe for many, many years. I mean, I think that the top level of European running backs are as good as American running backs. Tommy Oyewo, Glenn Tunga, these guys are college level running backs because their roster is insane. It's a dying breed. Maybe we'll see a turnaround, maybe we'll see with how these guys perform this year that other teams will say, well, you know what? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Imported Podcast, solo podcast today. It's been a long time since I've done a solo podcast, but I'm feeling a little rambly today. Okay, I'm feeling a little rambly today, so we're getting in it. I got a few different topics to speak about. We've got some European League of football in Europe stuff. We got some other things, some personal topics. So kind of just bounce around a little bit. This will be a nice little 30-minute therapy session for me that I'm going to film and put on the internet because it is 2024, and that is how we do it. So, guys, exciting time in the European football world. I think we're about 22 days away from the start of the fourth ELF season. And you know what? I host the live show with Silas. Silas and we host that every week. But we don't have enough, time to kind of articulate our thoughts in a longer format. It's a show where we have to move things along quite a bit. We have different segments. We have guests and stuff. So on some of these things, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about some of those topics. But yeah, guys, I'm absolutely thrilled for this season of the ELF. And maybe some of you guys saw, I got to host the kickoff press conference in Cologne at the FIBO, which, for those of you who don't know, FIBO is like this huge trade show, the biggest in the world for health, wellness, and fitness. Happens at like the FIBO or the Cologne Expo Center every single year. So I got to host that, or co-host that, and it was a very, very cool experience. And it's exciting to just kind of get more and more involved with the ELF, with whether it be media stuff or hosting or anything. What I kind of look at myself as is a communicator of American football. That's what I like to do. I like to communicate American football and spread it. And so I am just really excited to be getting involved in the league in these sort of ways, hosting the live show, of course. And then now, just talk a little bit more about all of it on my own podcast. But yeah, we had that kickoff press conference. I got to interview some people, and we got to break some new sponsorships. That was a cool thing. And overall, just the event itself is so massive and so impressive, and kind of like all the big fitness influencers and famous people, of course, in Germany and in many other countries as well, come there. And so that was a very cool experience. It's interesting. I've gotten quite excited about hosting things and speaking and doing kind of like live events. I'm actually doing another one in June at the Schwäbisch Hall Hochschule campus night. I'm doing a presentation there that I'll film as well and maybe put on one of these channels. But I'm kind of getting more and more into the live speaking world, and I really like doing it. It's so weird because I think like most people growing up absolutely hated public speaking so much, would be so nervous, when you had a presentation at school, just dreading it and would absolutely hate it. And I think gradually I have come to love it. I've become extremely comfortable with it. I'm really, really comfortable in public speaking now. And I actually really, really like it. There's something about it that I really enjoy. And it's interesting to see how one develops into different interests or skills. And this kind of brings me to a point. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that Laura and we will watch Parks and Rec. Great American TV show. One of the best comedies we've got. There's a famous character on there. He's one of my favorite fictional characters, Ron Swanson. He's a very principled libertarian, kind of an extremist libertarian character. He's really funny of like, being completely anti-government, like to the extreme, to the point where he says that we should take down all traffic lights. So it's a joke, but he's a very principled person, and he's very wise. And there's a famous quote that was actually in the episode we watched last night. And it is, never half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. Now, he said this to his coworker and friend, Leslie Knope, who was trying to do two big projects at once, run for city council and also be the head of the Parks and Recreation Department. And she was split, and she couldn't give her attention to both. And this quote really kind of hit me. Really kind of hit me at that moment. And it made me think about my life. Am I trying to half-ass many things? Am I trying to do too many things? Because I kind of do a lot of stuff. Of course, I do YouTube. I do this podcast. I do the ELF live show. I'm a filmmaker. I am now getting into speaking gigs and arrangements. And a huge new thing on my plate is my app, Quiver, that I have with my brother. So there's a lot of things that I'm doing, and that quote hit me and made me wonder, do I need to listen to Ron Swanson's advice? And I think in most cases it is very good, important advice that we should all listen to. Don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. But as I kind of chewed on that and thought about it more and more, I realized that I actually am whole-assing, giving my all to one thing. And that is to just be the most complete person that I can be. And with that comes doing a lot of different things, kind of little different domains, different fields, that all slowly add together to make me the most complete person that I can be. And when I look at it from that point of view, I don't think that I'm half-assing multiple things. I feel like, okay, I'm going all out on being just the most complete person that I can be, like I said. And I see actually a lot of benefits in sort of the cross-pollination of being involved in different worlds, different domains. A lot of you guys know about Unicorn Town. I worked on that for 7 or 8 years straight. It was a huge project. It was my big project for a long, long time. And now I'm working on something. My big project right now is something completely different. It's a social media app. But there's so many things that I pull from that filmmaking experience that I have to use now in Quiver, whether it be the consistency and persistence of working on something for a long, long time. I mean, I really learned how to do this with Unicorn Town. We had to do the same exact thing with Quiver. It was almost an identical emotional experience for me because, we've been working on Quiver for 1.5 years. With no results, with nothing at all. It's the same thing with Unicorn Town. I worked on that for years and years with no results, nothing at all. And it's interesting to see how you kind of pull skills and experiences from different aspects of life. Another point that I think fits together very well is now that I'm really into public speaking and speaking events, and how did I become comfortable speaking? And I realized, I became comfortable at speaking like this because I started a YouTube channel a long time ago. And I got so used to speaking to a camera over and over again and really having to articulate my thoughts out loud for years and years. And now I'm doing in-person public speaking events, which, is technically unrelated to YouTube events. I mean, I know that YouTube kind of helps me be known in certain areas, and then that would give me the opportunity to do some of these speaking events. But in terms of skill-wise, like video making and editing and storytelling is not the same as public speaking. But because of what I had to do to make those, I sort of developed this other skill that leads me to this other part of life and other field that I'm interested in. And that is that is what I really like. And I always call it kind of the cross-pollination of different things that come together and become more than the sum of its parts, giving me different perspectives on things and how to approach all these. I'm rambling on about it a little bit, but in short, what I am trying to say is I think there's a huge benefit into pursuing multiple disciplines and becoming competent. I would describe myself as your classic jack of all trades. And I'm just slowly moving myself along in a bunch of different disciplines. And, the interesting thing is I need to use all of these skills for our app, for Quiver. Because being a startup founder takes every skill that you've got, every single skill that there is in the toolbox that I've gained from any of these other disciplines, got to use it to be a startup founder. So, I kind of got off track there a little bit, but I really thought about that quote. Never half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. And if my end goal wasn't to be the most complete version of myself that I can be, then maybe I could argue that I'm half-assing a bunch of little things. But I'm actually, from the broader perspective, I'm whole-assing being the complete version of Nick that I hope to be, that I am pursuing. It's an interesting thought. It's very interesting to see how things develop as well. All right, so let's pivot a little bit from that Ron Swanson quote and me trying to justify to myself out loud my paths in life. No, just kidding. I'm happy with what I'm doing. ELF, European League of Football. So like I said, I'm obviously getting a little bit more and more involved and getting a little bit of peek at the league. I am such a huge fan of this league. And it's very interesting to see people's different reactions to it. I think now that the league's entering into year 4 and is like very legitimate and kind of established itself and is getting all of these very legitimate partners, KFC, for example, that's pretty big. L'Oreal Paris. There's less kind of haters, doubters, I don't know what the word is, kind of detractors, I would say. There was a lot of that in the beginning, in the second year, a little bit less each year. I, of course, got to witness firsthand the most extreme version of the detractors with the situation of people in Schwäbisch Hall going to be a part of ELF teams, whether it be the Surge or the Frankfurt Galaxy or the Munich Ravens, because a lot of people did. And so I got firsthand the doubters, the detractors, and the haters, I guess. And I am just so not a fan of that type of attitude. I absolutely despise that type of attitude, where it's essentially, who do you think you are to do this? And I'm not talking about myself. Obviously, I'm not a football player in the league, but this is just what I had witnessed in how people treated other people that I know. Basically, the attitude is, you who do you think that you are to do this? You think you're so great that you'll be involved in this, or even people having that attitude towards the people that started the league. Who do you think you are? We know how football in Europe is. We know how football in Germany is. You can't do this. Just that negative, pessimistic attitude of, this is how things are. You can't change it. It can't improve. Just be happy with it. And then any person who tries to break through that and disrupt or make a new version of the thing, there's a phenomenon, I guess you call it, tall poppy syndrome, where if a poppy grows too tall, the other ones will kind of cannibalize it and chop it down so that everybody is level, everybody is the same, and there's nobody that's sticking out or being taller than the others. That's what tall poppy syndrome is, and that reminds me of it, of people not not liking the ambition of somebody to start a new football league. And it's cool to see. And of course, the league is still in its infancy, but it is cool to see the popularity and the growth of it, despite all of these detractors and despite all of the negativity thrown at it. It's going, and it's attracting more and more talented players and coaches, and it's getting bigger on the media side of things. The reason that I even wanted to touch on this is there was actually an article that just came out in Men's Health magazine in the States, which is a very big, popular magazine. And the article is talking about Joe Thomas with the Munich Ravens, who is obviously a massive football name. And he brings such publicity to both the Munich Ravens and to the ELF. It's such a great thing. I love it so much. And there's this big article about him in that magazine. And that's giving a lot of visibility to people back in the States. I got interviewed kind of for the article because the guy, the journalist Brett, he had seen Unicorn Town, so we were connected on Instagram, and he actually kind of, just to get a little bit more context from a different perspective, we did a little interview for it, and so I have a quote or two in there, which is cool to be a part of. But it's creeping in. It's creeping in, and this is something that I have been such a proponent of and that I've wanted so badly. It was one of the reasons why I worked so hard for so many years on a documentary about football in Europe, and to see it creep in kind of to the American consciousness, and more Americans being like, oh yeah, I saw that European Football League on Instagram. That looks crazy, man. That looks really interesting. And even Willie Patterson, who's now playing with the Madrid Bravos, who of course was with the Rhine Fire last year, he talked about that. We interviewed him on ELF Live a couple days ago. And he talked about how he just scrolling on Instagram, had seen, whoa, this crazy league in Europe, the European League of Football, got a lot of fans, big stadiums, looks really cool. And just the visibility, I think we're creeping in there. We're creeping in there, and it's going to pass a turning point pretty soon to where that growth just continues. I love to see that. So in short, what I'm trying to say is, I despise pessimistic, this is how we've always done things, so this is how we'll always do things attitude. I despise that cynicism, and I love taking a chance and trying to burst through and set a new precedent for something. And the game of American football in Europe deserves that. And so I'm just thrilled with the where it's at right now and where it's going. And another funny thing is, now that I've gotten a glimpse into the European League of Football and met all of the lovely people that are working on things there, you realize that it's not a massive team. This is like a startup. It's not a huge, massive corporation with hundreds of employees. But the funny thing is, people think that, probably because the media stuff is so good, the social media, the Instagram, all of the graphics, the stuff that the league puts out is so high quality and so well done that people just automatically assume, oh, it's like the NFL. They've got the resources of the NFL. It looks the same as the NFL on social media with the graphics and what have you. And so people just automatically assume, oh, there's hundreds of people working on this league. And that's where you get like the detractors of people who are saying, well, why isn't this perfect? Why isn't this perfect? Because they see the level of media professionalism. Shout out to some of those people like Maxie Zimmer, who does a ton of that. They see the media professionalism and then assume that, oh yeah, this league has hundreds of millions of dollars to have everything be at that level already. And so it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, I would say, having such high-quality media stuff, because that's exactly what is needed to grow the game here in Europe. I've said for a long time, like, the talent is here, but it's never been packaged properly. Now, the ELF is packaging it properly. It's doing it a phenomenal job with the social media side of things and the visibility and showing people this. But then, because of that, because it's so high quality, people think automatically that everything is already at a mature state within the league, when in reality, it's on year 4. It's just getting started. In short, people need to chill the hell out on certain things. Anytime something kind of negative happens, or a team changes the branding, like the Switzerland team, and then you get a bunch of comments. I told you, yep, league's on its way out. No, yep, I told you, I've said it. And people jumping on those. Enough. Why don't you just root for football in Europe to grow, and root for the best, most prominent league that is spreading the game unlike we've ever had in recent memory in Europe? Why don't you just root for it? Why don't you just root for it? Let's have a little bit of optimism and stop trying to chop things down. That's my spiel. That's my spiel on the subject. Really, it really gets me fired up. I hate pessimism, cynicism. I hate it. Got to be optimistic, and I really am. Now, speaking of the ELF, I do want to give a shout out to a couple of ELF insiders, I guess we would say. Jamal Clay, Alex Malchow, and Matt Bressington. These guys actually have a podcast together. I think it's called the ELF Insiders. And they do great work analyzing and making content in media about the European League of Football. I love watching their stuff. I actually just finished watching Matt Bressington's video on the top wide receiver. Oh, Matt, you hit 1,000 subscribers too. Congrats, man. I'll put his channel in the description. But yeah, these guys do a great job of analyzing, creating content around the league. This is exactly what needs to happen. More and more people talking about this league and the sport in Europe. Although Matt and I have a little bit of disagreements on our top wide receivers here. Matt's got his top wide receivers here: Connor Weddington, Anthony Mohangu, Darryl Stewart Jr., Markel Castle, and Matt Cole. He's got Matt Cole at the number one guy. I think he's going to be great. If you guys watch ELF Live, you know I didn't have him on my list. Neither did Silas. And for me, it's because he hasn't played in the league yet. I'm really wary about putting anybody that hasn't played in the league yet on the top 5 lists, although talent-wise, I'm sure he's there. But it's also interesting. Matt does not think that Nathaniel Robitaille deserves to be anywhere near the top 5, as he said in his video. I actually had Roby at number 4 in my top 5 wide receivers list. Silas had him at number 1. And Matt said, I don't even think he's close to my top 8. And it's interesting. It's tough because Roby missed a big chunk of the season last year. He was injured. And then so he's a little bit out of sight, out of mind for people, I think. This is a guy who's been playing at the top level in Europe for many, many years. I got to play with him for a long time on the Schwäbisch Unicorns. Good buddy of mine. So maybe you could say I'm a little bit biased. But for me, why I've still got Roby in the top 5 of wide receivers playing in the ELF is watch the screen that he takes to the house, his first touchdown in the ELF championship game. Keep in mind, this guy has been sitting for like the last 6 to 7 weeks, has not been playing football. And the first touch that he gets in the biggest game in ELF history, in front of 31,500 people, highest pressure situation, coming off an injury, catches that ball, takes it to the end zone with an unbelievable display of lateral movement and explosion that I think is rare to keep when you get to be age 30 to 31 years old. Now, he's my age. Roby's my age. And a lot of times these skill position guys lose steps as they get to, that age. And that play right there showed me he has not lost a step at all. And the ability to take that screen, just the way that he moved on that, I'm like, Roby's still top 5. So that's why. Matt doesn't think so, but I like that there are more people giving their opinions on this league and the players in this league. And I just think we need more of that. Sorry, Robes, that you're not number 1 on my list. Silas has you number 1. But hey, see how you do out there in Hungary. Sorry, Robes, that you're not number one on my list. Silas has you number one. I'm curious to see how Roby does out in Hungary. The Enthroners, not a team that it's known for being one of the top level teams in the ELF just yet. One of the newer teams. And I'm very curious to see how Roby handles it out there, or how he performs out there with a different quarterback, different setup out there. Out there with the Fehérvár Enthroners. Fehérvár. That was one of the things doing the press conference. I always had to practice these kind of crazy European sounding names so many times. And then if you watch the press conference, it's on YouTube on the ELF channel. If you watch the press conference, you'll hear me speaking confidently and loudly. And, I'm talking about this and I'm speaking properly. And then I have to pronounce and the Fehérvár Enthroners. And you see me just get like real insecure in my pronunciation. That's something that I got to work on if I want to keep doing talking things, if I want to keep talking. Yeah. Another point in the ELF that's quite interesting, and actually on the live show this past week, we ranked them, the running back position in the ELF. And I said this kind of in a shorter way on the live show, but now I've got a little bit more time. I can elaborate a little bit, and it's like we have seen the running back position in the NFL kind of be treated as losing a little bit of value. People are now saying, well, you don't take a running back in the first round of the draft. They're a dime a dozen. You can get good backs in the fourth, fifth round later in the draft for way less money. And it seems like that attitude has made its way over to the ELF. And that if you look at where teams choose to put their A positions, their A imports, I think there's one American running back playing in the ELF this year. And it's for the Milano Seamen. And every other team in the ELF for their A spots, they go quarterback, wide receiver. And I get it, because I believe that it is much easier to get a talented European running back who is at a level. I mean, I think that the top level of European running backs are as good as American running backs. Tommy Oyewo, Glenn Tunga, these guys are college level running backs. It's harder to get an elite A-level receiver at the receiver position. At the quarterback, it's impossible, nearly impossible. We've got a couple guys who have kind of paved the way and trailblazed a little bit. Jan Weinreich, Marco Ehrenfried a while back. But as of right now, it's almost unheard of for a European to be A-level at quarterback. Receiver is a little bit of a different story. It's difficult. It's very, very difficult. But there are wide receivers in the ELF that are A-level, but there's not so many. There's not as many as there are running backs, which is why you've seen now the American running back in the ELF almost go extinct. And it's I do think it's the smart move right now with how the game has evolved and what's important. I talked to Jordan Newman about the league quite often, asked his expertise, and he says this is a passing league. But if you look at the teams that made it to the Final Four last year, to the semifinals, all of these teams had the ability to put the ball on the ground and to run and move the ball on the ground. Stuttgart Surge, the Rhein Fire, Frankfurt, and Vienna Vikings. All these teams could run the ball well because they with their strong European running backs. So, yeah, it's interesting, man. Like Tommy Oyewo, Glenn Tunga. I mean, these guys look like American running backs. There's a couple other running backs that are like close to that level as well. An interesting thing is the running back for the Panthers, the Ravsla Panthers, Kennedy Adams. This guy used to be American. Like he's kind of like me. He's a dual passport. and he is now going to count as an E import, not an A. So one might argue that actually the Panthers are having 3 A's on offense. But they already have kind of an elite level running back. They have David Brzezowski from last year, who was the homegrown player of the year and he was the rushing leader. He's like 22 years old too. He's got a lot of potential, a lot of upside. So they already have an elite running back. Now they're having an elite European running back and now an A/E running back to round out that offense. Stephen Duncan, this big, people are calling him the Cam Newton of the ELF, and I could see that comparison. I actually got to watch him play right over there at the Optima Sport Park because he played for the Dresden Monarchs last year against the Unicorns in the semifinals, and I was quite impressed with him. And the Panthers were smart to pluck him and get him over there. So Panthers are really loading up. I feel like they're kind of loading up quietly. On ELF Live, we did like most overrated team, most underrated team. We did the most underrated a little bit while back, and I actually picked the Madrid Bravos for that. Right now, I think I would pick the Wrocław Panthers for that because their roster is insane. Their roster is really quite strong, and they've got Coach Christensen, who's been there now for a couple of years. He's got this D1 experience, and you hear the people who have experience with him rave about him. So you've got this really experienced, sharp American coach who's put together an elite roster out there in the East. But I feel like they don't get talked about so much. And part of that's my fault because I'm one of the co-hosts on ELF Live. So now I'm doing it right now. Well, yeah. So I'm changing my opinion so that the Panthers, Wrocław, are actually the most underrated team, especially with sneaking in that Jennedy Adams, who's a very good running back. For him to count as an E for them, that's massive. Absolutely massive. Man, I love talking about the ELF, guys. This season is going to be so competitive. You look at the top half of this league. Rhein Fire, Frankfurt Galaxy, Paris Musketeers, Stuttgart Surge, Munich Ravens, Wrocław Panthers, Vienna Vikings, and then, you got, of course, Berlin Thunder are also up there. I don't think they're going to be great, but they're also a very good team. Hamburg might actually be solid. So, Madrid Bravos. What's that? That's 10 teams right now. And I'm leaving them out. I'm leaving teams out too. The Tyrol Raiders, they're always a good team. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs this year. Central Conference with the Surge and the Munich Ravens. I mean, I think most people are predicting those two to come out of the Central Conference into playoffs. But it's just so damn competitive, especially the top half of this league is insane. The way that these rosters are shaping up, this could be anybody's game this year. I do think, all right, Rhein Fire are probably the favorite again, but I think that they'd be the favorite by less. Last year, they were kind of head and shoulders above a lot of teams. This year, the gap is close, and there are more really good teams. Frankfurt, Frankfurt's lost to them every single time. They're kind of big rivals. Frankfurt is doing everything that they can with this roster that they put together in the offseason to beat the Rhein Fire. And when you listen to Coach Kozling, head coach of the Frankfurt Galaxy, talk about this, he says exactly that. We need to put together a roster to beat the Rhein Fire. They're 0-6 against them, I think. Haven't won a game against them. It's a huge kind of blemish on what has otherwise been a solid start to a ELF era for the Galaxy. But they can't get past the Rhein Fire. And they went out, they got Triple Crown winner last year, Markel Castle. They got Sandro Platzgummer, who is, when healthy, one of the most talented European running backs. I mean, he had all his experience in the NFL with the New York Giants. I personally played against him when he was like 18 years old. He made me look like an absolute idiot. I'm traumatized by his abilities. And then you got Luke Zaratka, who has the biggest arm in Europe, who has so much experience, who has won multiple championships down in Italy. I mean, now some people argue, okay, this is going to be a different level for Luke playing up in Germany, but people don't forget that he's actually played in multiple different countries and he played in the ELF last year, so he's gone against this talent. And the Milano Seamen with him last year were actually a good offense. They put up points. Their defense was very bad. But I think if they had a better defense, they would have won a couple more games. Speaking of the Milano Seamen and their defense, their bad defense last year, it's interesting that they're one of only 3 teams to get an American linebacker. We talked a little bit about the American running back kind of going extinct. Well, the American linebacker in the ELF is also trending down. There's only 3. There's Dawson Dales for Paris. There's A.J. Wentland for the Panthers. And then there's Zachary Blair for the Milano Seamen. And I think for the most part, most teams agree that going DB is the smart move on defense. But I think you get a kind of all-around linebacker like Zach Blair and put him right in the middle of that Milano defense that really, I think, needed kind of a spark. And I think it's easier to get that spark from a middle linebacker position than a DB position. DBs can kind of be run out of the game and just kind of put on one side and eliminate it, taken away. It's hard to eliminate a Mike linebacker from the game. It's hard to take him out of the game. And the way that Zach Blair plays, he's going to be all over the place. And I think he's going to set the tone for that Milano defense. So I usually, like in most scenarios, I would say, I don't know if you need to get an American linebacker on defense in the ELF nowadays. But in that case, I do think it's a smart move. And Zach plays like a maniac. He plays yeah, I mean, I think when I talked to him, and he used to play safety. I believe, and so you can see the way that he moves. But he's a guy that can go up on the line of scrimmage and pass rush, and then drop back into like a Tampa 2 deep third coverage. He's super athletic. He's not like a one of those old school big chunky linebackers. He's a new age rangy linebacker, kind of Fred Warner style, I would say, with that range. And I think Milano need to do something about their defense, and getting Zach Blair there is the move. So curious to see how that goes. What other teams do I want to talk about? Well, let's just stay on the linebackers. Let's just stay Dawson Dale. So he's playing for Paris. He's one of the other 3 linebackers, and he played with Coach Mark Mattioli in Parma, actually where my brother Mikey is playing right now. So Mark Mattioli won the Italian Championship 2021, I think, with Riley Hennessy as the quarterback, and then he's now gone to Paris, and Dawson Dales was also the import linebacker for the Parma Panthers. Mattioli took Dawson to Paris, and he's legit, man. I also got the chance to see him play live here when he was playing for Parma against the Unicorns in a CEFL Bowl. He's another one that I'm really impressed with, man. All over the field. He actually played both ways in the game that I watched, and he's just gritty. Just a gritty player. Add a lot of value all over the place. High energy, strong. And so I think that him right there in the middle of Paris's defense. Mark Mattioli is a defensive guy. It's cool to see that he grabbed his linebacker from Parma, and obviously it worked out. Dawson was a first-team All-League player last year, I believe. So that's 2 of the linebackers, and then the third is A.J. Wentland. I mean, what else can you say about A.J.? He's been the most talked about, not linebacker, most talked about defensive player in European football for the last few years. I think the only other person that I feel like I hear more about is Kyle Kitchens, but AJ obviously does it all. Another one, like if you follow AJ on Instagram, you'll just see he's a psychopath in the best way possible. He's works out like crazy. Yeah, he actually has like a training service with William James out there in Poland and Euro Athletes Academy, and I think they do a good job of putting together workouts for football players. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit biased as a former linebacker myself. I love to see that we still got a handful of American linebackers in the ELF. It's a dying breed. Maybe we'll see a turnaround. Maybe we'll see with how these guys perform this year that other teams will say, oh, you know what? American linebacker might just be worth it. And I think these three guys have the potential to inspire that possibility. Gosh, guys, I'm just so excited for the ELF season. I'm so excited. So excited for this. Let me look else. What do we got on Matthew Bressington's channel? So Matt Bressington does this thing where he ranks, like he does tier ranking of all of the team's imports, their A's and their E's. They're very, very interesting to watch. He goes super in depth. He watches a lot of film and he breaks it down, and he does them by tiers. And then another entity, ELFpedia, has all the great stats and statistics and data for the ELF. So you're seeing more and more people, organizations, entities get involved in talking about the game, promoting the game, and that's exactly what we need. All right, guys, I think that's it. The only reason I'm stopping right now is because we're going to run out of space. We're going to run out of camera space. So I think that's good for a little solo imported podcast rant. I think that'll do for now. Going to be doing more of these. We got a couple guests coming on the imported pod, which will be great in person and online. I'm going to start doing more online ones. In the past, I didn't want to do it. I wanted really high quality. Now I just don't care. I just want to talk to people. And so I'm doing online podcasts with more and more people, and we'll continue to do that. So thank you for supporting the channel by watching. The best way to support me is download my app that I have with my brother, Quiver. It's fantastic. It's very, very fun. It's very, very interesting. Gives you a couple minutes of value every single day. Makes you think. And we're working on growing it right now. So join us on Quiver. That's all for today, guys. All right. See you soon.